My name is Lance. I'm a husband, a father, and a church planter through city to city, Los Angeles. As I was sitting there in my seat, I thought of this quote. There's a philosopher. He says, life is not about what happens to you, but how you respond to it. It's a philosopher named Epictetus that said that first. And that kind of sums up our church planting story. My father is a pastor. My grandfather served time as a pastor. I have 5 uncles who are pastors in my family. And I served on staff at one of my family members' churches as a youth pastor. And somewhere in my 20s on staff, I realized that we weren't reaching people in my age group. We weren't reaching people that I went and had coffee with, that I went to college with. And we were committed to a church culture that maybe would never be able to reach those people. But I began to ask myself questions. How can we create a space to reach this next generation in these post-Christian times? My church is in Riverside, California. It's the 61st largest city in the United States. That doesn't sound like it's doing something, but when you put it in the context, like the U.S. got a lot going on. One of the fastest growing areas in the state of California. And we lean, in our church, we lean black and brown. There's a huge Hispanic community in our church. And what we decided to do, instead of just being homogenous, is try to reach our neighborhood. And we've done a phenomenal job. I think I could, toot my own horn, right? of reaching people in our community. We've done our best to be an outward-facing church, to have a city vision, and to really meet the needs of those in our community. And we've experienced in the past 5 months, we've been birthed 5 months ago. In the past 5 months, we've experienced that our church is becoming indigenous to the community. And the growth has come from the people in the community. And our strategy for that, the vision for that, understanding how to produce a ministry like that, has come from the training that we've received from city to city, Los Angeles. Not only has my life been changed, but my leadership and the opportunity to serve my church, those things have changed because of this organization. And we're looking forward to a great future of just impacting the city of Riverside for the gospel.
Man, these guys are my heroes. And just to be able to be a small part of their cheering section. I feel like they're the ones out there boxing. I'm just in the corner, man, with some fresh water and a towel and encourage them. So I'm so grateful that you guys get to meet these awesome people.
Tomorrow will be our 13th Sunday as a brand new church. And anytime someone asks me, like, how's it been church planting? I just tell them it's a jungle. Church planting feels like you just got dropped off in a jungle and you have a backpack and a machete and maybe a pack of matches. It's been crazy. Our first 4 Sundays, we were in 3 different locations because just things don't go as planned. People don't show up as they were supposed to. Contracts fall through. And we were in 2 different cities within the first 3 weeks because it's just emergency mode. Like, you got to find a place, got to find a location. But through that all, we've just seen God's grace and God's presence, God's nearness. I was just thinking as we were talking, I just looked at my phone. We've already had 50 first-time decisions to Christ in the last 13 weeks. People responding to the gospel. We're saying, hey, if it's your first time receiving Christ, would you just raise your hand? Man, just so many conversations just organically. One of the cool things that we have is ever since the 2nd week, someone in our church offers to buy lunch for the whole church. It just kind of started with this one mother, single mother. She's 59, she has 3 kids, and she's like, I just want to pay for lunch this Sunday. And then since then, it's just kicked off the last 12 weeks. We've had lunch, like 150 of us just sit randomly in tables, talking, eating. My personal desire is not to burn out, not to get so caught up in God's mission that I forget I'm in this for the long haul. My wife, we've been together for 10 years, married 6 years. These last 3 months, she's been looking at me saying, I'm living my dream, like with tears in her eyes. And she's never said that to me. Like, we've been together since we're 21, we're both 32. And she'll look at me like crying and saying, I'm living my dream. And then I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, I've always wanted to serve God. I've always wanted to reach people, but I've also always wanted to have a healthy family. She's a pastor's kid, a missionary's kid, and her family was always very unstable and shaky. And she would just look at me and said, honestly, when we were gonna plant a church, I was so scared that I was gonna lose you. You're gonna be so absent-minded. You're just gonna be anxious and depressed all the time. But by God's grace and His perfect timing and plan, it's been a gift. Thank you guys for believing in us, supporting us, praying for us, and funding us. Without you guys, we really can't do this. So thank you guys so much.
What's up, guys? My name is Paul, and this is our 7th month. We planted in June of 2021 in the city of Westminster, and one thing I learned at City to City was we were studying the parable of the sower, right? Scattering the seeds. And when me and my wife first got called to plant a church, it was like right when we got shut down. And so what we started to do was, forget the building, forget all that. We just went right into the community. And one of the interesting about Westminster, it's like 80% Vietnamese people. And so Vietnamese have another strong culture. So us going in there and proclaiming the gospel, it is like a mission field. So we're going in there. And so that's why our church, we're very intentional about being multi-ethnic, multicultural, and not just that, but multilingual as well. Right now, we just added our first language as a church, a Cambodian service. And so the Cambodian pastor is part of our staff. They have a Khmer service. We have an English service. We do 2 separate services, but we come together for fellowship and hospitality. This is where we make our connections. This is where people can see the gospel come together, because it's not about our face or our language or anything, is because of Jesus. And that's where we're together. And that's our whole team. We always make a joke. If it wasn't for Jesus, none of us would be friends. If it wasn't for Jesus, all my leadership team, if it wasn't for Jesus, none of us would be friends, because we're all different. We all come from different backgrounds, different places, different spaces. So I grew up in the Korean church, but when I left the Korean church, I didn't have a home. Right? Culturally, that's what happens sometimes when you leave something. But City to City gave me a home. And so I can come here, unpack what I need to unpack, talk to people about ministry, because we love Jesus. It's not about anything else. And so that is our mission for Free Life Community Churches, to make every nation, tribe, and tongue disciples of Jesus Christ.
So my name is Bobby Lopez. We're in east side of LA, which is basically East LA area. So it's a really rough area. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a place people ask me what happens if you don't get these kids and these adults. I said, people die in our area all the time, and it's really tough to go through that. We started out with the teen program. We always said that we want to know where the enemy thinks he's strongest, so we could remind him that he's not. So we started going to juvenile halls, we started going in all these, in the foster homes, and those are the kids we wanted to connect with, because that's who we are. 95% of our team, they actually come from the neighborhoods we serve. There was a young lady we met named Cielo. When we walked in, she was 13 years old. We met her at church. She came out and hung out with us for a second. Turns out she was at a house that was raised with a lot of meth house and everything like that. She was one of the reasons we decided to plant the church, because we knew that as she grew up, she wasn't going anywhere else. And she was still developing in God. And she became an adult. As she grew up and gave her life to Christ and developed, now she works with Youth for Christ. She's a minister for them. She actually helps run their conferences on Biola and everything like that. And this is a young girl who didn't have that in her life. So these are the kids that we're going after. I didn't want to go out there and just build a church to bring Christians in so we can have a rally every Sunday. I want to change lives. And so we've been able to do that, thanks to Larry and his team of leaders. And honestly, my friends doing the same thing that we're doing. When we get together, we're stronger. And we've been really blessed to be able to see that. I would just ask you to keep praying for us. It's hard in the urban community. It's hard because you feel consistently like you're losing. Even when you have to have a lot of faith, because you feel like you're losing. But you have to have faith to know that God's doing something great. And because he did it in our lives, and we know he could do it in these kids.
Thank you for your partnership with us. 14 new churches have been planted in 2021 because of your partnership. We have 15 new church planters in James cohort. 10 of those will translate to new churches in 2022. 5 of those are younger pastors that are taking over existing congregations. They're revitalizing older existing churches, and they've asked if they could be part of the City to City training program. So they won't result in new churches, but they will result in healthy, gospel-centered, revitalized churches. So your partnership with us is making a difference. And when you think of City to City, pray that to the Lord of the harvest that he would help us find more church planters, more courageous, gospel-centered, Jesus first kind of men to plant these churches. So please be praying for us.